You know, every single year, hundreds of thousands of kids feverishly write letters to Santa Claus. Do you know that? They put them in envelopes, they address them to the North Pole. And it used to be that back in the day, this organization called the Santa Claus Association, that was based in New York City, would respond to as many of these letters as possible. And even sometimes buy the gifts that were on the wish list in these envelopes from these kids, until one day the Santa Claus Association got caught in a crazy fraud and the organization completely collapsed. But you know what didn't collapse was these kids still sending letters. Every single year, even still today, hundreds of thousands of kids write their wish lists and their hopes and their desires down, and they mail them to the North Pole, but they don't go to the Santa Claus Association anymore. Now they go to a dead letter facility in Anchorage, Alaska. And does anyone know what a dead letter facility is? A dead letter facility is this barren building where mail goes when it has no intention of being responded to or dealt with. It'll just be eventually burned. It's a dead letter facility. And so all of these kids writing their hopes, and this small volunteer team in Alaska does the best they can every year to try and respond to as many letters as they can, but it's not a whole association. They can never quite put a big enough dent in all the letters that they get. So hundreds of thousands of kids send all of their hopes and wishes and even their lists to this barren building that will most likely never respond. And my hope for you this Christmas is that you would stop sending your hope in the wrong direction. You know, as this season rages on, as you all tailgate each other up and down Route 4 and the Parkway, I see you, I know what you're doing. As you scream at people you love in the Target parking lot, I know no one in this room, you know. As you circle the Bergen Mall parking lot for 30 minutes, even though I've told you always go to the parking deck. There's never parking in the lot. There's always parking in the deck at the Bergen Mall. Go to the deck. But you forget, and so you're circling the Bergen Mall parking lot for 30 minutes. I want you to be able to slow down and just maybe ask yourself this question. Am I sending my hope to the right address? Because the disciples, let's jump to it. The disciples are in a similar predicament in Matthew chapter 14, starting in verse 13. And the story that we're in right now is so important to Christmas. So this is the biggest miracle of Jesus Christ, and it's the only miracle of Jesus Christ, save for the resurrection, that's told in all four gospel accounts. You know, even the birth story of Jesus is not told in all four gospel accounts. And what do I mean by gospel accounts? For those of you who don't know, the first four books in the New Testament are called Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And those are all the story of Jesus, which we've been in for several months now. And in all of those accounts, the only miracle story that is told four times is this one. Again, the birth of Jesus Christ itself is only in two. And so we jump in verse 13. When it says, Jesus heard about it, he withdrew from there by boat to a remote place to be alone. Now, what is it? For those of you who've been with us, you know Jesus is in the middle of his ministry years, and he's doing a lot of incredible things. He's doing all these miracles. Some people respond nicely to him, some not so nicely. And he was born in a dysfunctional family, so I don't know if you know about that. Some of y'all coming in here, Jesus relates to you, you know what I'm saying? Jesus was born to a teenage mom in Nazareth, a place that not a lot of people like, you know, like a hood, really. And he had a crazy cousin who got locked up and was in prison and actually died in prison. And he just heard about it. He just heard about that his cousin passed away in prison, which is a dysfunctional family if I've ever heard one. And Jesus heard about that, so he withdrew. He's in mourning from there by boat to a remote place to be alone. And when the crowds heard this, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a large crowd, had compassion on them, and healed their sick. I just have to pause there because I find it crazy how compassionate Jesus is in his mourning. They disregard his humanity in his mourning. having lost the closest family member to him at this time. John is one of the only people in his family who's named over and over in the gospel. So likely the most close family member to him, he loses, goes to mourn, and can't do that because the crowds come to him, and he has compassion on them and healed their sick. When evening came, verse 15, the disciples approached him and said, "This place is deserted, and it is already late. Send the crowds away so that they can go into the villages and buy food for themselves." And so the disciples are not being mean here when they see the crowds, right? Because it can be juxtaposed where Jesus had compassion and then it seems like the disciples are not. No, they're just being socially appropriate. In these days, it was socially inappropriate for teachers to also physically feed their students because they're saying, hey, this big crowd, like not only can we likely not feed 5,000 people, it just also is the case that we just don't do that. We just mentally and intellectually and spiritually fed you. We don't have to physically feed you too. So they're just saying like, well, now it's getting about that time. I think y'all gonna have to go home and find some food after we've spiritually fed you. But Jesus flips the script on them in verse 16. He says, they don't need to go away. Jesus told them, you give them something to eat. But we only have 5 loaves and 2 fish here, they said to him. Bring them here to me, he said. Then he commanded the crowds to sit down on the grass. He took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed them. He broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. Everyone ate and was satisfied. They picked up 12 baskets full of leftovers. 3 points that will help you place your hope in the right direction this Christmas. Point number 1, Jesus changes the equation. Jesus changes around the entire equation. You know, verse 17, let's jump there. It says, but we only have 5 loaves and 2 fish here, Jesus. They said to Jesus, hey, you know, you've told us to feed this large crowd of people, but Jesus, I don't see the materials needed to feed this humongous crowd. And I like the way that John puts it. You don't have to flip there, Chris. With John chapter 6, you see that a little bit more happened. It said, Philip answered him, 200 denarii, like a whole lot of money worth of bread, wouldn't be enough for each of these people to even have a little bit of bread. And then one of the disciples, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, there's a boy who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they for so many? So we see the disciples, they get this call from Jesus, go feed everybody. They get this mission from God himself, and then they start looking to only what they can gather, what they can find, and what they have. God in the flesh tells them to go do something. And instead of just believing that because he said it, that thing will be done, they look to what they have instead of what they've been given. They look to the crowd to try and satisfy the crowd, but God was the one who sent them on the mission. They look to what they have instead of what they have been given. And that's the thing. Jesus changes the entire equation because they're doing pretty good math. You know what I mean? Like they're calculating correctly. If you divide 2 fish by 5,000, you get 4 10,000ths of a piece of fish. That's math. I did the calculation on a calculator this past week, so I know. That is a calorie, maybe 2 calories. They would burn 10 times the amount of calories just waiting in line and saying thank you for their little crumb of fish. They're doing pretty good math. Hey, Jesus, this is all we have. And a little boy gave it to us. All we have is a little boy's Lunchable. How are we going to feed the 5,000 people you just commanded us to feed, Jesus? I just don't see it here. The thing is, they're not doing any miscalculations. They're doing misidentification. They have calculated very well, but they have completely misidentified who it is that is going to feed the people. They've completely misidentified who they are in the role of feeding the people. And they've left out the most important variable in the entire equation, Jesus himself. They left out the most important factor. the only common denominator they need for the mission of God, for the thing that God has asked them to do, is God. And they leave him out of the equation. They turn away from him, go and check among all the crowd to see who has what and to see who is equipped to help them feed the people. Meanwhile, Jesus didn't tell them to do that. And here's the thing we do. Here's the thing you do. You look to what you have. You look to the accounts that you do or don't have. You look to the breakup that you have. You look to the familiar relationships that are not near to you anymore. You look to the grades that you don't have, and then you get discouraged and you get down, not because you're bad at life or because you're failing, but simply because you have removed the most important variable from the equation of your life. But I'm challenging you today. Can you consider a variable beyond what you currently have and what you currently see, what you can currently count, and what you can currently calculate? The problem here is that you're looking to your own accounts. You're looking to your own sleepless nights. And I got to be honest, that's exhausting. If Jesus is who he says he is, then maybe life feels heavy for you in the season of joy. Not because you're weak, but because you're not considering the most important variable. And I think this is what Paul was talking about in Ephesians 3, verse 20. When he says, now to him who is able to do above and beyond all that we ask or think according to the power that works in us. Above and beyond all that we would even think to ask. Do you realize that the equation of Jesus operates in the expanse beyond you? That when you finally think to ask him for a crazy thing that doesn't even make sense. Hey, Jesus, could you feed the 5,000 people maybe? Because we can't. When you finally think to ask him to do it, he's already beyond it. He's already got 12 more baskets. He's already got an abundance. He's already got more than you could even think to ask of him. Which is the very reason why point 2 is just simply bring what you have. Bring what you have. That's what Jesus says. I'm just repeating his words. In verse 18 of chapter 14, he says, bring them here to me, he said. Just bring it here to me. Whatever you have, hey, Jesus, all we have is 5 little pieces of bread and 2 fish. It is not enough. Bring it to me. I know it's not enough. I know you don't have enough. But bring it to me, though, and I will make it more. You see, I find it very interesting, though, how the miracle had to be done with so little. When you think about it. Why is it that only one little kid had something to give? That math, now that's not good calculation. That math does not math to me. You're trying to tell me 4,999 people got up, heard where Jesus was, right? Verse 13, it says, when the crowds heard where he was and they knew he was in a deserted place. They knew he was in isolation. They knew he had went to a place where there were no markets. There was no food. It was a deserted place. They knew where he was. You're trying to tell me 4,999 people got up that day, got dressed, got ready, prepared to go to a deserted place to go learn some things with no lunch? There's no way possible that happened. Be real. It's a beautiful day outside today in Hackensack, New Jersey. And I can guarantee you it's somebody in this room sitting in here with an umbrella in their purse. Because we just come prepared to things. Somebody has an umbrella in their car right now. I know it for a fact. I see some heads shaking. I'm telling you, we just come prepared for things. That's life. There's no way 4,999 people got up and went to a deserted place unprepared. Nobody had food to give. No. What happened then? Well, 4,999 people were so self-important that they couldn't fathom, handing over the food that they brought for the prospect that they and everybody else might be fed. 4,999 people, so self-absorbed that they couldn't even fathom that when Jesus sent the disciples to say, hey, just hand over what you have and I'll make it enough for everybody. I don't like that. Is that a parable? Are you trying to tell another analogy? Because I can't eat analogies, you know what I'm saying? I'm not going home hungry. And if I hand you over my food and then I don't get any, I might not make it home because we're in a deserted place. And, I got medical conditions and I don't know that I'm going to make it back in this heat. And it's just, I'm not doing it. No, I don't have anything to give. But one person, one singular person, the age of a child, was foolish enough to believe the disciples when they came to him and they said, hey, give me what you have and I'm going to make it. He didn't understand what they said when they said to him, hey, give me what you have to give, little boy, and we're going to take it and we promise you're going to eat too, because that's what he's saying, and everybody's going to eat around you too. Hey, I don't understand what that means, disciples, when you say it, but here you go. I believe you anyway. Only one had the foolishness of faith, enough foolishness of faith to believe that God could do something with what he had and do more than what he had. Only one. And that is the posture that it takes for this miracle to unfold. It takes a certain level of foolishness. For the goodness of God, for the power of the birth of Jesus Christ to come to you, it takes a certain level of foolishness, doesn't it? It takes a certain level of foolishness to believe that God can take your overdrawn accounts and make you somebody who could bless everybody around you this Christmas, this expensive Christmas. It takes a certain level of foolishness to believe that Jesus could take the abuses, the brokenheartedness you currently have, and not only heal you, but make you a healer. It takes a certain level of foolish faith to believe that he can take your gross past and maybe even the curable or not so curable things you might have because of that past and make you a family man or a family woman, somebody who births a whole family centered in Jesus, lifted up as a beacon of hope, a little city on a hill in its neighborhood where people don't even know what you've been through, but they look at what you have now and they're like, I want that in my life. It takes a certain level of foolish faith. I mean, it's the same level of foolishness you hand over the keys to your BMW to a valet driver with, you know what I mean? You don't know where that little boy getting ready to take your car. You do not know. I'm going to take your Beamer. But you hand it over, bringing what you have, trusting that this is somebody who can take what I have and take it somewhere that I can't. This is what unfolds the miracle and brings us to point number 3. Add the bread of life. Point number 1, Jesus changes the equation. Point number 2, bring what you have. And point number 3, add the bread of life. Because you see in Matthew 14, verse 20, It says, everyone ate and was satisfied. They picked up 12 baskets full of leftover pieces, whole baskets. God is a God of abundance. God doesn't come to your house just to show you how to put a little bit of extra water in your soap dispenser so you know how to stretch it, operating in scarcity, you know what I mean? No, God comes with abundance. God is a God of abundance that when you finally think to ask, could you feed the 5,000? He has 12 baskets, not 12 lunch pails, 12 baskets. A basket would have fed multiple people. 12 baskets full of leftovers. But it comes because of layers of foolishness. You see, in verse 19, the foolishness didn't stop with the kid. It says, then he commanded the crowds to sit down in the grass. That don't make no sense. This man is still standing up here with 5 pieces of bread. But he looks at a crowd of 5,000 and says, sit down. No one in their right mind actually sits down in that moment. Especially the people who hid their food because they're like, I have more bread than you, Jesus. What are you talking about? You standing up there with 5 pieces of bread? I got 7. How you gonna feed all of us? I'm gonna just go eat my lunch in a bush, okay? I'll be back. What are you talking about? You're standing up there still with 5 loaves. Foolishness. But they took the foolishness of the little boy and it multiplied through the crowd. And as hey, we came all the way this way anyway, we might as well sit down and see what happens. And it doesn't stop there. He then took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed them. So now we still have only 5 loaves of bread and prayers and thoughts. And that's it. And it continues on. He then breaks those 5 loaves. He starts breaking them and giving them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the crowds. You see, the miracle didn't happen because the loaves got multiplied into 1,000. The miracle happened because the foolishness of faith that multiplied in that crowd made what was brought to God enough for everybody. And so here go the disciples. They're taking the bread from Jesus like, bro, I don't know what you're doing. You're bugging, but I'm going to hand it over to these people anyway. And I'm breaking it. They're handing it to the people like, hey, I'm sorry. Like, y'all probably not all going to get fed. You know what I mean? But the people in the front, maybe just a little. We only got 5 loaves, y'all. So please, everybody, y'all can start leaving if you want. And they're breaking the bread and bringing it to people over and over until they're like, wait, we fed like 100 already. What's going on? And they keep getting the broken bread and bringing it, and they're like, oh, we fed 5,000. What has happened? And they keep grabbing the broken bread and they're bringing it till we fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread. And the miracle happened because Jesus said, the bread of life has appeared. He brought a brand new equation. What am I talking about? In John chapter 6, he clarifies it this way, starting in verse 32. Jesus said to them, truly I tell you, Moses didn't give you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. You see, this is a story from the Old Testament, the beginning of the Bible, where Moses, the leader of the people of God, he's leading the people through the woods, the wilderness they're living in. For years, God decides to feed them by raining down bread from heaven called manna, which is why that word manna, you've probably heard it before. White manna, 2 blocks away from here, most popular burgers. That's a play on this story from the Old Testament. The manna. And so he gave them this bread, literally from heaven. And then verse 33, for the bread of God is the one who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Then they said, sir, give us this bread always. I am the bread of life, Jesus told them. No one who comes to me will ever be hungry, and no one who believes in me will ever be thirsty again. Jesus says, take what you have, bring it to him, because he is the bread of life. In other words, he's saying you don't need the bread he gives. You need the bread he is. You don't need all the other things, because the whole point of faith, what you receive in faith, what is the point of your faith? Some would say, because I receive heaven, I receive blessings, I receive favor. Cool, all that is true and good. Way more than that, it's because you're in your faith, you receive Jesus himself. He is the gift. He is the thing that you need. And receiving Jesus, you receive all the things Jesus deserves. When you receive Jesus, being the only one, the only human who ever deserved heaven, who deserved the goodness of God, you then receive the power of God, the goodness of God, the love of God, the kingdom of God. You need to add the bread of life to your equation. You need to add the bread of life to what you need to look at what you have, acknowledge that it's not enough, and add the bread of life. Because that's the reason you can have a whole kingdom. You can have a whole mansion in Alpine, New Jersey, and still be sick and depressed. Because you have a kingdom, but you don't have the king. But you know the good thing? You know the best part of what the story of Christmas shows us? It shows us that you don't have to go looking for the king. The king came looking for you. And praise Jesus, because if you're under the sound of my voice, congratulations. He has found you. He has found you.
You have made it to the end of the episode, and I'm proud of you. Seriously, not that many people took this much time today to grow in their faith in Jesus, but you did, and that's something to genuinely be proud of right now. I pray with these podcast episodes is that you would be impacted and changed by them. And if that is the case for you, I'd like to encourage you to respond in one of two ways. First and foremost, if you just decided that you want to start believing in Jesus and growing in your faith in God, I need you to text the word NEXT to 973-313-5100 right now. Again, open up your messages app right now, type in 973-313-5100 and text the word NEXT. Someone from our team will get with you and help you start growing. The second is if you would like to join in the mission to help other people take next steps in their faith, like Eden Church is set out to do, I need you to text the word GIVE to 973-313-5100. Again, that's GIVE, 973-313-5100. I'll catch you next time.